Sebastian Schieke, your host, and today I'm talking to Eric Wohlwend. Eric is an amazing character. He's a very successful property investor, and today he will share a very important advice with us. For everyone who is successful and who has kids, we always have to ask ourselves, what can we do to help our kids to thrive and to really put everything in to become successful on their own without just relying on the success of their parents. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you for having me, Sebastian. It's an honor to be here with you and your listeners.
Yeah. When I read your profile on Podmatch, where we met, I was really very interested to learn because I also have kids. And after almost 25 years now in business, being relatively successful, I really wanted to learn what can I do to really lay the foundation for my kids, not just to rely on the success of daddy, to really put enough effort and drive into their life to also become successful. When I started, I was starting basically from scratch. I grew up in a very simple environment and really made it from nothing. And looking at your story, you have a very similar story, which is very interesting. So tell me a bit, how did you manage to come from this warehouse where you used to live, right in your profile, to where you are right now, Eric?
Well, we do have a similar story. I started in real estate about just over 20 years ago. And we started by fixing up our own house. We moved into a warehouse with no heat, no plumbing. And my wife and I fixed it up, turned it into a house. And from then on, the lessons we learned, I decided not to go to medical school. My degree is pre-med degree. And so was my wife. And we just kind of went in search of what we were going to do with our lives and ended up buying and fixing up another rental property. And then we did 20 more of those in the next 2 years. And then we did 100 more. Now I've done over 1,000 rehabs. And we still own many hundreds of properties. And as I was going through that, starting from scratch, just like you, starting with no money and no daddy to bail me out, I decided that, what's the use of building this? I could have quit. In fact, I did retire when I was 30. But if you have the ability to grow enough assets by the time you're 30, you really don't have the ability to not work or contribute in the world. So next thing I know, my wife tells me, you better get out of the house. And I start 2 new businesses. And each of those are thriving today, as well as everything we had going before that. And I thought, well, every parent wants to give to their kids. They want not necessarily to give, but they want their kids to have a better life than they did. But I've seen too many, and you wouldn't believe the hate mail we get on social media about, the kids were born with a silver spoon in their mouth and they were given everything and daddy takes care of them and mommy and daddy's money and blah, blah, blah. I was determined not to raise a couple of trust fund babies. I was determined that some of these ultra rich people, the billionaires of the world, sure, there's some of them that are in the tabloids, but some of their kids grow up to be as normal can be. And they take over the business and they grow the business and, far exceed what their parents did. I wanted my child to be in that second group, not the ones that are out drinking too much, getting into drugs or whatever other problems. So I really focused on what can I do? And I realized when I was in high school, I had a job working for a company. They had about a dozen stores. And the father had built this amazing business from nothing. And then his kid, who was a great lawyer, he wasn't a great CEO. And one by one, I was there as the store shut down. And by the time I left, they had half of the square footage in the last store that they had started with. So that really weighed on my conscience. What am I going to do to make sure my kids learn and grow up? And I decided I don't care if they take over my real estate. I don't want to see my legacy sold off. And if that's what they want, if they happen to buy it from me, get it from me whenever before I die, I'd rather they don't sell everything off, but if they want to sell the stuff that's more hassle and buy what they like better, that's fine. If they don't want to have anything to do with real estate, that's fine also. But I want them to have the understanding that if they choose to keep my properties, they don't wither away. I don't want a lot of deferred maintenance. I don't want the tenants to move. I don't want them to go broke. I mean, there's too many contractors counting on me for paychecks. There's too many tenants counting on me to make sure their furnace works and their roof doesn't leak. And we make a really nice amount of money, but we do that because we provide value. And I don't want my children to ruin that value that we are providing to the world. So I've always taught them with that in mind. And only once has one of my children told me, and I think he was 3 or 4 at the time, said, "Dad, why do we have to stop by that mobile home park again?" And I had just bought another new mobile home park. And these are the old 1960s homes that have a lot of work to do. And I was checking up on some new contractors I hired. It takes 5 or 10 minutes. We swing by, I make sure they're doing the right stuff, and we move on. And if you check on your jobs once a week, then these seem to go a lot more smoothly, especially when you have brand new contractors working. I said, "That's fine, Devin. You don't worry about it. I will never ask you to go to a job site with me again." He goes, "Really?" And he's thinking, what's the catch? I said, "But I will never spend $1 that one of the rentals makes on another toy for you or to take you on another vacation or anything else. So if you want to support the business, it'll help support you." And he thinks very hard about this. He said, "Dad, you don't really make any money except for real estate, do you?" I said, "No, I don't." And then the next week, the job was finished up, and we went to drop him off at grandma's like normal on Sunday night and drove straight past the job site. He's like, "But Dad, aren't we going to stop? I'm ready to go." And I said, "No, actually, they finished that job up. We'll check out another one next week, I'm sure."
Yeah, this is so important to teach them that they should care and that they should really support everyone who's helping them in the process. It's not just hiring contractors. You all have to be there, answer their questions, and really understand what they are doing. Yeah, to really learn the business, and they have the opportunity to learn it in a young age.
Yeah, my contractors, our office staff, you work with them for years. And I had a guy call me today that's worked for me for over 10 years and said, "Hey, can you go out to lunch? I need something." Sure, absolutely. He didn't need anything. He was there to check up on me, make sure everything was going well, see what else he could do to make my life better. But yeah, you have to honor and respect the people that you're working with.
Exactly. And I think this is what a lot of the younger generation is missing. What I see in the school for our kids, to respecting other kids, respecting other parents, this is something which is unfortunately not at present anymore as it was in my time, I would say.
No,
so
we had
teaching your...
we had issues in high school, but and everybody wants to argue about, you're from the wrong country. You have the different skin color. You're the different political ideology. You're the wrong religion. Fill in the blank. And they don't understand that no matter what people look like or even how they talk or act, we all need to work together if we want to achieve something great. Nobody can do it on their own.
Yeah. What I would be interested in, I mean, we both grew up having almost nothing. Yeah. So I actually grew up in the eastern part of Germany. Yeah. So in a communist country. So entrepreneurship didn't exist. Yeah. And when I was 14, we moved over to West Germany, and there I was really amazed about the opportunities people have, running their own business, also financial abundance. And this drove me. Yeah, this is coming from nothing and really achieving something I didn't have. What I'm worried is that now, obviously, I've been quite successful, accumulated some wealth, and my kids, of course, see what we have. And how can I create this feeling, this drive, that despite there is something there, they still want to achieve something. They still want to go out in the world and create value. Yeah. So this is one of the most important things in my view.
I did not grow up and live through anything like you did. My father had no money. And between my mom and dad, they managed to put him through medical school. And we didn't have enough food to eat sometimes. But by the time I was 4, my dad graduated from medical school. And a year or so later, my wife was dramatically different. And he was a dentist in a small town, didn't make that much money, but definitely a lot more than many of the people that lived in that town. So we didn't really do without. And I grew up in the very typical middle class, pay off all your debts, don't owe anybody, save money, work hard, all that stuff. And that is not at all how I raise my kids. Of course, you have to work hard. But saving money in this inflationary environment is idiotic. I grew up in the 80s hearing stories about the 70s that I barely remember and the 80s. And even back then, I thought, why would I put money in the bank when a year from now, even with interest, it'll buy me less than a day? So we go out and buy hard assets as fast as we can. And I've shown my children how we do this. I taught them, you don't need to go to a bank. If you provide enough value, then you can get private lenders to loan money to you. And both of them bought their first property without any of my money when they were 7 years old. And of course, we have to set up LLCs and everything, make it easier.
Yeah.
But yes, it is absolutely legal to do that. And there is some way you can do it in your country. But I taught them. And now my kids, my 15-year-old is at work right now. He's working in the real estate brokerage today. The 13-year-old is doing his homework. He is on a podcast tomorrow, so he's getting ready for that because they're both on podcast every week. And the 13-year-old worked in the bookkeeper's office and helped with maintenance calls yesterday at the office. But every day or every week, they spend time with their grandparents. Every week, we go and travel and do whatever with them. And they work for a day in one of our offices doing something every week. So they are learning the business from the ground up. They're learning every aspect. And they started, I didn't know what the adults in the office would think when we had like a 6 or 7-year-old in there, and he put on a suit and was very responsible, but he's still 7 years old. And I said, Lila, how'd that work? Did they accept, you don't let anybody else bring their kid to work? They said, they ask when Devin's coming back. They love that they don't have to get it from their desk. They just yell, hey, Devin, and they hand him something and say, take this to app processing. And she says, oh, give this to the receptionist. Tell her to send a police. And he's emptying the trash and running notes and files back and forth to everybody. And then he learned how to do filing. And he does reconciliations. And these are things your kids can do when they're very young. And so that's how I started my children. And now they have a respect for the business. And they know how to grow the business. And if they have a handful of empties in their company, well, they learn how to do more advertising. And they know to ask, Dad, what do I do if we're not getting enough phone calls? And my answer to them is the same as every other employee. Read the systems manual I wrote, and if you can't figure it out, then ask me.
So they're actually doing phone calls then? Did you put them on the phone and...
Oh, they've been doing phone calls since they were maybe 11. Devin published his first book, wrote it at 10, published at 11. He was on stage in front of 100 people by the time he was 11 years old. He has spoken on the stage with people like Robert Kiyosaki, Ken McElroy. He was out in Scottsdale with Mark Victor Hansen. His third book's coming out. And next month, he'll be old enough to drive.
We're 16, no? You're...
So that's, they learn. And if you talk to a baby like a baby, then that's what they hear. I read books to my children. And sure, my wife read Oh, the Places You'll Go, which is a fantastic book for every CEO out there. Sure, it's by Dr. Seuss, but it is a great book to teach you about the waiting place. Don't wait. Don't hang out there. Be creative and take action are some of the main lessons I taught my kids. And if you ask my wife, she says, I didn't read them age-appropriate books. I read them things like Atlas Shrugged. But you have to figure out what you're interested in. And if you have a baby, they don't care what you're saying. They just want you to hold them and talk to them. So
yeah, to listen to the voice, exactly.
Right. Yeah. So why not do that and spend some time with your kids and get some enjoyment out of a book you like? At the same time, they might pick something up from it.
Yeah, I mean, my oldest son is also very much into business development, personal development. The other day, he came to me and said, "Hey, Daddy, I want to start a drop shipping business. I want to make some money on the internet." I said, "Yeah, let's look into this, I mean, why not? Yeah, he can only learn. And this is an amazing opportunity." So
it's never too early to start. Encourage them.
Exactly. Yeah. So how do they interact with other kids in the age group, which are obviously not as advanced and as business focused as they are?
Well, they interact wonderfully. They're both in Boy Scouts, and growing up, the older one was getting a little bit shy, and his mom said, "Oh no, I was too shy when I was your age. I got into acting classes, and you are too. We're going to get you over this right now." And this is when he's like 3. We're in Taekwondo. I've done a series of martial arts, but we're black belts in Taekwondo, been in Jiu-Jitsu and Kung Fu. And from the time they could barely more than they could walk, as soon as I could convince the sensei and to let them in, they were training in the kids' classes. And I'll have one of them, I think the older brother was out on the mat, and the other one was walking down, shaking people's hands, saying, "Hello, my name's Ethan," and just introducing himself to every parent in the auditorium. And they're in Boy Scouts, and yeah, sure, they're speaking on stages a lot across the U.S., and they're on podcasts all across the world, and they talk to all the kids. They're always gravitating. If there's any other teenagers there, they talk to all the adults intelligently, and then try and sneak away and go swimming with the teenagers or whatever else at whatever hotel we're in. So they do get to do that. And we live on a farm. We have an orchard. They helped me plant the orchard. We planted hundreds of pine trees as well. We bought a backhoe and dug a pond. And so they have all that. My 15-year-old has a girlfriend that's a few hours away, and I don't want to drive. She just got a driver's license. He doesn't have one yet. So we threw him in the plane and flew down there. And he flew the plane the whole way there and most of the way back late at night. So
of course, why not?
Yeah, why not? I thought, I want to raise my children to be normal. And I have them digging holes with shovels, not just the backhoe, to plant the fruit trees. And they mow the yard and they do the dishes every day. And all of these things that I had to do growing up. And I realized, if you can jump in a plane to see your girlfriend, you're not really that normal. So that they see the benefits. And they also know that these are earned. They're not given to you. You don't just get this because you're my son. If you're not keeping up with your work, if you're not ahead, they're homeschooled so they can go at their own pace. I said, that's fantastic. But if you're not ahead, there's no way you're going to see your friends. You get done with this. The one is almost an Eagle Scout, and the other one was in a merit badge yesterday. So he'll have one more Eagle required merit badge, and hopefully he'll be getting promoted. So that's, they're doing all of these things. We just don't waste time on things like going to traditional school every day. We don't learn how to stand in lines or sit down and shut up. We learn how to take charge, be creative, and take action. We train them for the things that have helped me in my life. I don't train them, don't cheat off your neighbor. I train them, find the smartest person in the room and work together with them. You'll never make it unless you have a good team.
I really like this homeschooling idea. How do you facilitate this? Do you have a teacher who's teaching them, or do you do this between you and your wife?
My wife and I started making up absolutely everything. Now, depending on the country you're in, if you look, Russia is very difficult, but I know a young lady who's early 20s now. She was homeschooled her entire life, graduated, and made it through in Russia. Different states in the U.S. all have different rules. California is much more difficult than Ohio. But once you get over filling out the right paperwork for your local government or maybe your federal government, who do you think knows your children better than you? Nobody knows how to teach them.
Yeah.
And people say, well, I'm not smart enough. Of course you are. We learn almost everything we need to learn by the time we're in fourth grade. And if you're a rocket scientist, then you know a lot more math than I'm ever going to remember, even though I have a college degree. And if you're a doctor, then you know a lot more biology than most people will ever know. But you probably don't remember your English lessons as well as a writer does. So every parent, I believe, has the ability. And the school system only teaches in one way. If you are good at reading and memorizing, you will be good in school. That leaves out over 2/3 of the students. So my older son would have done fine, but my younger son, I'm sure they would have tried to put it on medication and said he's ADD or OCD or fill in or whatever. They don't want to work. And I mean, Mom and I care a lot more about him than a random teacher. And there's an awful lot of great teachers there. But how can you control 30 people you don't know? You get new 30 people every year. And you have to meet these standards that the government tells you need to meet, whether you agree with them or not. I have a Wednesday meetup group, and we have a principal and multiple teachers that show up frequently because they're also tired of the school system. They're really great people. They really want to help the kids, and the system is failing the children, not the teachers, but the system.
Exactly. The system you can't change.
No. You can do it. The first thing is believe you can. My wife wrote a great part, and I wrote half the chapter, but we have a whole chapter on homeschooling in our book, Family Success Triangle. Okay. And there are a lot of groups that you can join up, and some people hire private tutors. Some people, I needed help, so I helped my son's scoutmaster get into real estate. Helped him buy 20-some properties in his first year or two, about 2 years of business. So they felt indebted to me. And I said, well, you're both teachers. Your wife teaches Spanish. And I absolutely am terrible at Spanish. I am great at math and science, but not at Spanish. So she helped out and brought them over to our house once a week and tutored them, just because I was helping them in business. There are plenty of people, like I said with business, find the right team. It takes a team. It takes a village to raise a child. Just like it takes a team to raise your business and grow it. And that is the essence of my book, how raising children and teaching and homeschooling them is the same as raising a platoon in the Army. I was a platoon sergeant. And raising all of your contractors and employees in a business and taking care of all of your customers. There's a lot of similarities, and all the lessons you learn in one place can benefit you in another.
You mentioned your book a couple of times. Yeah, you wrote an amazing book. Maybe give the audience a bit of a quick management summary on what you got it there, of course.
So there we are. Family Success Triangle is our most recent best-selling book, and the triangle aspect of it is how you integrate your children into business, which is exactly what we've been talking about. My kids started playing a game, memory, flipping over the cards. And then I just told them how to do it in numbers. And they took a piece of paper, found a number, and then they put a check mark beside it on the screen. And I said, if the bottom right corner gets down to 0, you win, and I'll get you some ice cream. And that's how I got my first bank account reconciled by a 3 or 4-year-old. And the more the kids worked in the business, the more they understood, the more the business made, and the more time I got to spend with them. And it wasn't about balancing family and business. It was about integrating them and letting them do the fun things. No, I don't make them spray for bed bugs. I don't think that would be fun, so I'm not going to have a child do that. I hate sanding drywalls, so the kids don't do that. But if we have water damage and they want to go check on their new house that had a flood, they get to kick down the old walls practicing their sidekicks from karate, and they think that's a blast, right? So we integrated them into the business. The business gave us more time with the family. That gave us more money to invest, which grew the business and gave us more time with the family. And the triangle is simply the integration of business, family, and investing. So there's the essence, the lesson I'm trying to teach everyone in the world. Spend more time with your family and grow an outrageously successful business all at the same time.
Sounds like a very interesting read. I will definitely need to check it out. I like this idea of integrating the kids in the business. I mean, I do this not to the same degree as you do this, but I'm giving them small things and I let them participate on successes, but also failures. They should also learn sometimes things don't work out. And what I always show them, never give up. Yeah, and it was a time where things didn't really work, and my oldest son came to me and said, "Daddy, I really love that you never ever give up." And this really made my day. I said, yes, if everything else doesn't work, if they learn, that you should never give up and should always do everything to succeed and try the next thing until you win. This was the major lessons I wanted to give them, and I was so blessed that he saw this, and he really created this. And
it doesn't matter if you get a job or start a business. It doesn't matter where you go. You're going to fail. You're going to ask a girl out and get turned down. You're going to do something wrong. And that is really my biggest problem with the school system is they punish you for failure. No, as long as you get back up, as long as you try one more time and you get knocked down, you will never be a failure. You will always succeed at everything you do. You just got to try it one more time. And so I think if that lesson you taught is probably the most important thing you could ever teach your children.
I had a big discussion with one of the teachers of one of my youngest sons a couple of weeks ago. They did a test in school, and he knew everything inside out. It was about drawing electrical circuits, and he got minus points on every drawing. And I asked the teacher, why is that? He didn't use a ruler. I told him in school they should use a ruler, and he didn't use a ruler. And this is why you on every exercise you take something off. Yes. And I had a half an hour discussion with this lady, and she was young. She was probably 25-ish, And her main message was they should exactly do what they've been taught in school. And I just thought, okay, on this small thing, it's an issue, I don't want to discuss this even further. But look at the big system, If our kids are only taught to repeat what they learn, how should they solve the big problems we are all facing in the world? How should they be creative enough to deal with all these challenges?
You're stating exactly the problem that I am trying to fix. And none of us can fix the school system. We can, however, encourage our children to grow up differently. And I'm trying to design a system so the norm is allow them to take chances, encourage them to take chances. If you have little boys, they need to fall down and skin their knees a little bit. Don't let mom be too overprotective. The dad is there to let them do things that mom wouldn't let them do and then pick them up after they fall down. It's okay to make a mistake. How else are you going to learn how to ride a bike? And the same thing goes in business and in electrical drawings. But you give me a guy that puts the circuits and the resistors and everything in the right place, and I think that's a lot more important than drawing straight lines.
And you know what? The second mistake he made is there was a circuit, and he put a switch into the circuit, which wasn't supposed to be there based on this story of the teacher, And she said, "This is wrong. We didn't taught that there should be a switch in the circuit." I just said, "Give me a break, lady. This is stupid."
That's okay. That's why she's a teacher and you run a business.
Hey, Eric. I think we learned so much from this conversation. I really need to get your book, and we put this in the show notes where people can order it. I think everyone should read this because, as you said, the system is broken, and we need to empower and encourage our kids, to grow up and to develop the skills they need to not even survive, to thrive in this world of constant change. And who can do this if not we?
And the lessons that we teach on stage in the books, and both of my kids write books mainly for teenagers to read. Their group, and they have their own young entrepreneur group. So how do they relate to other children, I just heard last night, Devin was very excited. He had 90 people subscribe to his Millionaires in Training group, which is for 8 to 24-year-olds. And he's got this free online thing. We have people from Australia and the US and Canada and Europe. And so, yeah, they are doing their best to teach the lessons that they learned to all of their peers that are willing to learn all across the world.
Amazing. I need to tell my kids they should look it up.
Absolutely.
Eric, is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we wrap up this conversation?
That's it. If your children or anybody else's are interested, everything is linked on my website, clearskytrainer.com. We have a free newsletter. I'm fairly successful, and I just want to use this to give back. I spend at least one day every week just teaching new investors how to invest and how to grow businesses. So anything I can do to help your audience, I hope they got a lot out of this. And I want to thank you so much for giving me this time.
Thank you for being here, Eric. It was a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm sure the value you provide is amazing and people really can make a lot of use of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sebastian.